Hello everyone, Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal. It is Tuesday. I hope the day is going well wherever you're watching or listening to this around the world. Thank you as always for joining me. I really do appreciate it. We've got plenty to get stuck into today. We're going to talk about selling players, which is certainly the theme of Arsenal at the moment. It's the big talking point of Arsenal. When are they going to sell? Who are they going to sell? How much money are they going to bring in? Will that allow them to go out into the transfer market one more time before the window shuts in just under 2 weeks' time? So we're going to look at the job Andrea Berta has got in his hands at the moment. Kiwior, Zinchenko, Reiss Nelson, Fabio Vieria, some big decisions that need to be made very, very quickly when it comes to selling players because the clock is very much ticking. We're going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about Viktor Gyokeres as well, give my views on what, quite frankly, I just think is a ridiculous overreaction. And I know there's going to be a lot of analysis on players, especially big money players who come in, but he's played one game, and already the knives are out and the big personalities are out trying to, I don't know, unsettle, disturb, I don't know, but I just think it's quite frankly rubbish. And so I'm going to give my thoughts on that. We've got some questions and comments from you guys as well to get stuck into today. Just a side note, myself and James Benj will be sitting down for Inside Arsenal Extra Time a little bit later on today. I'm sure we'll be talking in depth about what we saw against Manchester United at Old Trafford, At the weekend, we'll be looking ahead to Leeds, looking at what changes, if any, Mikel Arteta will be making for that game. Anything you want me and James to discuss, any questions you've got for us to answer in this week's Extra Time show, get down into the comments. As always, let's start it with Extra Time. Give us your question, give us your comment, and I'll pull some of them together and get them included in the show, which will go out a little bit later on today. Right, let's talk selling, shall we? And the art of selling. Andrea Berta's had a good summer. He's done some good business. He's done business early. He's strengthened the squad. You know, Mikel Arteta, as much as I think Mikel would love one more player in, I think he's very, very happy with the job and the business that Andrea Berta has done when it comes to strengthening the squad. But obviously right now there is a big need for Arsenal to move some players on. You just have to look at the players who weren't even involved on the substitutes bench at the weekend against Manchester United. Jakub Kiwior, nowhere to be seen. Zinchenko, nowhere to be seen. Reiss Nelson, Fabio Vieria, Sambi Lokonga, nowhere to be seen. Christian Norgard was ill. He wasn't there either. And yet you still had a jam-packed bench. The squad is big. It's overloaded. It needs to be trimmed. Then Arsenal need to try and bring in some money because they've spent lots of it this summer and they have not brought any in or barely brought any in. And if they do harbour any hopes, and I can't say for certain whether they do, I wish I could, but I can't say for certain whether they do. But if they do harbour any hopes of dipping back into the market one more time this window, then it does feel very much linked to the potential of exits and some high-profile exits. I mean, I've got Kiwior and Zinchenko on the screen there, but there's a lot more to be discussed. Like I said, Sambi, Vieira, Reiss Nelson, Leandro Trossard, you know, who hasn't signed his new contract yet and didn't even come on against Manchester United. Noni Madueke came on ahead of him. So the futures of some big players need to be decided. And we are approaching decision time. You know, talks have been going on for some of these players. Stuttgart have been in talks with Arsenal for a fair while now over Fabio Vieira. Nothing yet has been agreed. I saw Jordan Davis over at The Sun reporting yesterday that Stuttgart are willing to walk away from those talks at the moment if Arsenal don't lower their demands for him. Jordan was reporting that Arsenal wanted around 25 million and at the moment Stuttgart are offering up to 75 million, 75 million, that'd be nice, 17 million, including add-ons for Fabio Vieira. Figure at the moment Arsenal aren't too willing to engage on. But as we get closer to the window, which as I said closes 2 weeks tomorrow, Stuttgart will be hoping that Arsenal will lower those demands. Arsenal will be hoping that Stuttgart will just go a little bit higher to get closer to the number you want. It's a big game of brinksmanship, Berta's brinksmanship at the moment. And it's a case of who is going to hold out, who is going to be successful when it comes to these talks. Kiwior, I think, is the most interesting one out of the lot, you know, and I've had a lot of grief on this channel in the comments this summer for saying that, talking about Kiwior and saying a smart club would probably sell Kiwior this summer. And that's not me saying I think Arsenal should. I'd be absolutely happy for Kiwior to stay. But I don't think Kiwior's value while he's at Arsenal will ever be higher than it is now. I don't think they'll ever get more money for him than they will now. And is Kiwior ever going to be an absolute guaranteed starter at Arsenal? No, he's not. It's just not going to happen. You know, they've already signed Mosquera this summer, who I think they see potentially as someone who could come in if the worst would happen and a Saliba goes, for example, in the next couple of years. Do I think they see that with Kiwior? I don't. We've seen already this summer when Gabriel's not been playing, Calafiori has been first choice left-sided centre-back in pre-season. So Kiwior's a good player, but I don't think Arteta and I don't think Arsenal see him as a guaranteed starter ever. And so with his price now as high as I think it will ever be because of what he's got left on his contract, and more importantly, how he ended last season, the performances he put in, not just domestically, but in the Champions League at the very top level in the Champions League. The smart piece of business would be to sell right now if a good offer comes in, especially if Kiwior is quite keen on doing the move. The fact that he didn't even make it onto the bench against Manchester United as well suggests to me that, that Arsenal will be open for this happening if a good offer. But again, it all depends on an offer because you don't want to take a low ball offer for someone like Kiwior. You look at his age, you look at, as I said, the performances he put in at the end of last season, you look at Arsenal's need to make some significant money. They can't be giving away a player like Kiwior. Porto have been talks with Arsenal for a while for Jakub Kiwior. Nothing's materialised there. We know that AC Milan, Napoli, some other clubs in Italy have been looking at Kiwior. Of course, Arsenal brought him in from Italy a couple of years ago. So he's going to be a really important one, I think, from this. I think a lot depends on Kiwior. We haven't heard yet. It hasn't really filtered out that he's absolutely been pushing for a move. But I would suggest if he's looking at what happened at Old Trafford at the weekend and thinking, well, where am I going to play? Then a move would be appealing for him this summer. So we'll see what happens with him. Reece Nelson, talks have been going on for Fulham. Again, nothing happening. It all feels like, and you can understand it because the clubs that are interested in signing Arsenal's players will be looking at what's happened so far this summer. Arsenal brought in a lot of players. They've got a big squad. They'll be looking at it and thinking, Arsenal need to sell here. Why would we go in right now and just offer what they want for him? Let's push it. Let's keep it dragging out. Let's get closer and closer to deadline day and see what Arsenal do because there is a need for them to sell. So you can understand, Arsenal aren't in the best of positions when it comes to bargaining for these players, and buying clubs will know that. And so it's going to be a difficult job for Andrea Berta. It's one that we've yet to see him blink because he hasn't agreed to a cut price deal for any of them yet. So it's a difficult job for him. And I think it's one he's going to be really judged on because it's not just about selling. It's not just about buying. Sorry, he's done that well. It's not just about signing contracts, getting players to sign new contracts. He's done that well. But it is also about selling. And so for him to be really assessed on the work he's been doing since he's come through the door as sporting director, that's going to have to be taken into account. And I'm sure he knows that. There's a feeling that Arsenal are bad sellers. That's a feeling that the club are well aware of. They know that's how they're viewed. And he will be well aware of that. He will know that's how they're viewed. And he will want to prove to people that he can sell players, that Arsenal are not pushovers in the transfer market. So it's going to be a really interesting 10 days, 13 days, whatever it is now till the window shuts when it comes to Arsenal and selling players. I'd love to get your thoughts on it. Of the players that we all know potentially have the chance to go this summer, and Zinchenko, Vieira, Sambi, Kiwior, all those players. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. How much do you think Arsenal should be getting for these players? And do you think that the club should be entertaining offers for them? Let me know below in the comments, and I'd love to get those views and see some of the figures that you guys have got in your head for what these players should go for. Let me know in the comments below. Gunnar Greg was asking about this. He asked about Kiwior being left out of the squad and whether it could be an indication he may be sold. I think it has to be. I think it's a clear indication of where he stands at the moment in the pecking order at Arsenal. If you can't get on a 9-man subs bench, then it's a pretty clear indication to me that there's a chance that you could go between now and the end of the window and that the club are open to selling. There's no other way you can really look at it, I don't think. And I'm sure Kiwior, there's no other way that he would be looking at it right now. And look, he'll know that talks have been going on about moves away as well. He's not, he'll be involved in this. His agent will be involved in this. The Porto stuff's been going on a little bit of time now without any, offer coming close to Arsenal thing. So he'll know what's going on at the moment. And so yeah, is it an indication he may be sold? It absolutely is, 100%. I'm going to talk about Viktor Gyokeres now. And Matt has got in touch here. He says the overreaction to Gyokeres is as predictable as it is disappointing, but it also reflects many people expected too much to begin with. It's going to take time to establish what Arsenal have got with VG. I've said all along, for his considerable strengths, his game has some crude edges that he's going to need to work on. We saw that in pre-season and yesterday, but what I've seen from him so far in terms of personality also makes me more confident than I have been that he's going to succeed. I also continue to think Havertz is a player most underrated by the fan base. I absolutely agree on that, on Havertz, by the way. Yeah, so the reaction to Gyokeres, as I said, I think is quite frankly ridiculous. But as you say, Matt, I think it's pretty predictable in the world we live in now. In the world where analysis isn't really analysis anymore, it's just basically one-upmanship, and it's an opportunity for numbers and for producing shareable content, all that sort of stuff. That it's just something that, unfortunately, we have to get used to, because I don't see it going away. I don't see it going back to the days of actual sensible analysis. This is one game. He's played one game, his first ever game in the Premier League. And already you're seeing stuff like a headline. I mean, I saw one tweet saying, "Oh, we should cash in on Gyokeres," and that was from an Arsenal fan. I think we should cash in on Gyokeres this summer before it's too late. It's like, just signed him. Well, how on earth is that going to happen? I saw Rio Ferdinand talking about it as well on his channel, and having a dig and predicting he might flop. I see Carragher and Neville talking about it. Carragher saying that he won't play the big games and all that sort of stuff. Although, he did say he predicts he'll score goals. And I think he might be right. He might not play the big games. I've never thought Viktor Gyokeres is coming in to be an Arsenal's absolutely first choice number 9. He's coming in to compete and play with Kai Havertz and rotate with Kai Havertz. That was always the case for me. And I got hammered in pre-season. And I'm still sure that if Havertz hadn't got that injury that he did, that stopped him playing in the Villarreal game, I'm still sure in my mind that Havertz would have started at Old Trafford. I don't think Arteta would have had in mind for Gyokeres to start this game. He would have wanted to give him a little bit of an acclimatization period. But because of Havertz's injury, because that meant that he started against Villarreal and then he started the game against Athletic Club and he scored in that game, that sort of made it his position to lose for the game against Manchester, or not even lose. It just made it his position, I think, for the United game. Arteta kind of had to start him. But I think if Havertz hadn't got that injury, I still think Havertz would have started that game. There has to be a period of adaptation. There has to be a period where you allow him to get used to his teammates, to a new way of playing, to playing in the Premier League, to coming up against defenders like Matthias de Ligt, who he just doesn't come up against every single week in Portugal, who has that quality, who has that strength to be able to go sort of shoulder to shoulder with him, as we saw against Manchester United at the weekend. There just has to be a bit of time where you let this player find his feet in a new league, a new team, with new teammates in a new city. It just seems to be, if you have one bad game now or one underwhelming game, that's it. You're rubbish. You're going to be a flop. That seems to be the analysis that you see right now. Not all of it. There is still good analysis out there, but certainly online and all that seems to be the thought. And it just, I really hope that Mikel keeps him in the team against Leeds. And I really hope he plays well. It was only a week ago that we saw him play well at the Emirates, score, and suddenly he was going to be this superstar player, which again was an over-the-top reaction. It was just one good game. And now suddenly you have an underwhelming game where you're not really involved, which isn't your fault, by the way. It's because you're not being found by your teammates, because everyone's is just struggling to adapt to the way Arsenal were trying to play last weekend and didn't play well. And so, I think you're right. I think it is predictable, as it is disappointing. It is just the way of the world when it comes to analysis. Am I worried about Viktor Gyokeres after Old Trafford? Absolutely not. I've seen enough in his character and his personality, as Matt points out, to suggest he'll shrug that off. He'll be like, it was a bad day at the office. I didn't get much of a sniff. I wasn't fed by the midfield. I came up against a really strong defender in de Ligt who had a good game, who challenged me. That one's behind me now. That's another 60 minutes in the bank. That's my first real taste of Premier League football. Bring on Leeds this weekend. I'm sure it's exactly how he's going to be feeling. Really hope he scores. Really hope he plays well. And we can just see him slowly get to his best and get used to life at Arsenal. Well, moving on to some other questions now. Mario has got in touch on the Discord. Says, "Hey Charles, safe to say that over the next few weeks, fullbacks will be the biggest point of interest when the team sheet comes out. Appreciate that we can expect rotation given the level of competition, but as the season progresses and potential hierarchy forms, who in your opinion will be the starting fullbacks for the big and important games?" I think it's impossible to really predict that, Mario. I think a lot of it depends on form. I think Calafiori has got his place in the team now because of form. I think he had a good summer. I don't think Miles did. And I think that's why Mikel is playing him at the moment, because he's just in the best form. It's an embarrassment of riches that Arsenal have. They're so blessed with the fullback options they have if they stay fit. And so I just think whoever's playing better at the time, I think is going to start the big and important games. It's a flip of the coin really, in terms of who starts. I think Calafiori has that shirt at the moment because he's playing really, really well, and because I think Miles had, not by his standards that we saw at the end of last season, he didn't have the best of summers. And I think Timber was obviously is a little bit behind Ben White in terms of fitness at the moment. Ben White had a good summer. Timber's been working his way back up to full fitness, and that's why Ben White has got the shirt at the moment. But I think it's equally as important, or just as important in terms of who's going to be starting these games, is just in terms of how Arteta manages their minutes and make sure they all play a lot. They're all in the game a lot, and that none of them get overplayed. And, he's got the confidence to be able to do that with the fullbacks because he knows that they're all just as good as each other and they all offer slightly different things. You can play to the opposition as well, which is a lovely position to be in. Do you want that more overlapping attacking fullback in Ben White, depending on who the opposition is, or do you want a more defensively solid one-on-one, machine in Jury and Timber? And you can say the same over on the other side. Do you want that real sort of swashbuckling, gung-ho maverick in Ricardo Calafiori, or do you want Lewis Skelly to come in and give you a bit more control in the midfield, the way he will invert a lot deeper than Calafiori was? It's a brilliant position to be in for Arsenal. But I do think form is just going to really dictate who starts in the biggest of games. Femi here has got in touch, says, I thought Arsenal played very fast against United. Did you see the article by James Benge? I did see that article. It's very interesting. We'll talk about that in Inside Arsenal Extra Time a little bit later in terms of the speed at which Arsenal were playing at Old Trafford. James did a really interesting looking at the data piece on that. So we'll talk about that with him later on today. So fans have been crying out for Arsenal to play quicker, and I thought they tried to do that. It will definitely take some time for them to get up to speed with it. No pun intended. Oh, sorry, pun intended. I'm really glad because the team will be able to play any style of football with time, fast, slow, attacking, deep defending, etc. And that is what you want to have. Also remember that almost every season a team does not click very well initially, but becomes better as the season goes on. I expect the same this season as well. And look at our bench of players that come off first team quality. This is what we want. Absolutely. And I think you're right there. I remember after the Tottenham game in pre-season, the big sort of mood on social media was, this is the same old Arsenal playing the same way against a low block, struggling to do that. And so suddenly in the last couple of games, we've seen a completely different Arsenal playing a completely different style of play. And yet you also now see people moaning, going, they can't play transition football, all that sort of stuff. It's, you can't have everything. You've got to try out new things and a new way of playing, especially with these strikers. Arsenal started to do that in the last couple of games. And isn't that what we all wanted? Didn't we want to see them playing a slightly different style? Hadn't we all become a little bit frustrated with that, the controlled football and the sideways passing football and the struggles against the low block? I think we had, hadn't we? So the fact that now at least trying something new, it didn't work against United. They didn't take advantage of the situations they created for themselves against United. But isn't that what we want to see? Them trying something new, to try and play different football, to try and play to the strengths of someone like Viktor Gyokeres. It just takes a little bit of time. It will take time. You just can't click your fingers and suddenly become this completely different football team. Benjamin now has got in touch. What's that? Zubamendi took one in the face in the open exchanges from Mbeumo, and as soon as that happened, I feared it might throw him off a little. To me, he looked like he was trying to get back into it from that point, and the longer the game went on, the more he recovered. This would have been a brilliant game to bring Madueke on in place of Saka because Saka was so off it. I also think that as United progress and improve, Old Trafford will become a tough place to go as the season goes on. Really happy to get the win, and I'm excited for Leeds at home. Martinelli is clear where we can upgrade, and I really hope we do. Who do you realistically see coming in? I wish I could sit here and answer that final question of who do I see coming in. I just don't know. I don't know if they even will bring anyone in at this point. Like I said, the focus is very much selling at the moment. If they can do that, if something does happen with Leandro Trossard, then I would expect them to try and do something in terms of replacement. But, at the moment, it doesn't appear anyway with Trossard that it feels like anything is realistically close for that happening. So I just can't answer it at the moment, and I just don't know if they will bring anyone in at the moment. You're right about Zubamendi. I thought he grew into the game. He did take a nasty one in the face. I just thought that midfield, both of them really struggled. Declan Rice was an unusual performance from Declan Rice. I'm not sure if he was fit. I don't know what happened. He took one in the face as well, didn't he? Early on, they both did. Rice got smashed in the face by the ball in that early free kick just after we'd scored the goal. Whether that affected him for the rest of the game, I don't know. But it wasn't the usual Declan Rice that we've seen. And Arsenal's midfield was bypassed a little bit at times. But I did think Zubamendi grew into it and he showed a lot of fight, which was a good thing to see. And I'm really looking forward to seeing him play this weekend against Leeds. Myers got in touch and says, isn't it a mistake to overlook Eze just because Ranieri has signed, and in a game like yesterday, the manager doesn't even have the confidence to bring Ranieri on the pitch. It may be that Odegaard could not be replaced due to his work he does defensively, but Eze could easily have be brought in instead of Marino. Isn't it a mistake to overlook Eze? Yes. It's all I can say is yes, I think it is a mistake. Arsenal, unfortunately, I don't run Arsenal, so I can't tell them that it's a mistake. I can voice my opinion. I've been saying all summer I think Arsenal need Eze, and I think it's a massive mistake that they let him go to Spurs. I really, really do. But as I said, Arsenal clearly don't think it's a mistake, or they don't think it's enough of a mistake for them to spend the sort of money it would take for them to bring him in. And they do feel in those central areas that they've got more than enough at the moment. And ultimately, it's their decision that counts, not my decision, not your decision. As much as we all wish at times it probably was our decision, but it's not. And so they clearly don't. But I agree. Yes, I think it's a mistake, and I think he would have been massively useful to this squad. I think it would have been a fantastic addition. But unfortunately, it doesn't appear like they are going to be trying to do it. And he is having a bit of a free run on his Spurs are having a free run on the way to signing him, which is not great, but it is what it is. And unfortunately, we can't change that. That's it from me this morning. I'll be back later with James Bench for Inside Arsenal Extra Time. Again, anything you want us to discuss in that show, get down into the comments, start it with Extra Time, give us your questions, give us your opinion, and we'll pull some of them together and get them included in the show. Until then, have a good one. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.